Hello, and welcome to On My Shelf. Today, I have a humorous, entertaining, yet deeply emotional adult novel recommendation for you. Anxious People by Fredrik Backman is a story about some quirky characters who are looking at an apartment. And while they're all being shown this apartment by a real estate agent, a bank robber comes breaking in. It's the story of all of their time together, in which a lot of surprising things are revealed. Fredrik Backman is the author of A Man Called Uva and several other amazing adult novels, including My Grandmother Told Me to Tell You She's Sorry, and one that you might recognize, Beartown. I already said this book was brilliant, and I am pretty much a super fan of Fredrik Backman's. I read everything that he writes, and this one was no exception. When I saw that he had a new book out, I waited and waited for it to become available. Backman has a way of capturing human nature that just makes us see ourselves, and that also feels deeply true. He also expertly marries emotion with humor, and I think that's what makes his story so special, is that you feel the emotion, but you also laugh and you want to cry, and it imprints itself onto your mind. You basically find yourself laughing with a lump in your throat. His characters are also incredibly relatable, even though they come from entirely different backgrounds. And I think it has a little to do with how he is a student of human nature. From a craft perspective, these are the things that I really appreciated about Anxious People. Number one is pacing. He writes very literary stories, but you feel like you're flying through them. And part of that is that he uses short chapters, and he also jumps from one head to another. So you're never in one person's head for so long that you get a little bored. Number two is brilliant character development. I've said this before, I feel like he's a student of human nature. And even if you haven't experienced what a character is experiencing, you have experienced likely the emotions, and that helps you connect with the characters. So I feel like he either observes people a lot or he's lived 100 lives. Number three is connections. Bachman is masterful at creating these connections between tiny little threads that weave into a giant whole. And sometimes it's between characters, sometimes it's between situations. And it's not in an authorial intrusion sort of way, but more in like a life is serendipitous kind of way. And I just love that. So here are the takeaways from Anxious People. Connections. Sometimes as a writer, I feel afraid to make these little connections like Fredrik Backman does because they might seem unbelievable. But what I've learned of life is that it's a series of serendipitous connections. And if that's what life is, then why wouldn't I be braver about using those in books? Number two is study human nature. Whether it's in our everyday interactions or if it's sitting on a street corner listening to a conversation, we can always use these different connections that we have with other people. I feel like that's something that writers have to get good at, is acknowledging that we're nosy people. I remember my mom calling me nosy as a kid, and it's true. I enjoy listening to conversations and just observing people and watching the way they walk and the way they dress. And I want to be better about going out and observing people and using those observations in stories. And number three is humor falls short without emotion. I think sometimes we try to be really funny in stories, but the humor falls short if we don't also tie it to some kind of deep emotion. So embracing humor, but also finding the emotional thread that runs through it. That's something that I want to do more in my fiction. So I guess the moral of that story is embrace humor and embrace emotion. And that's it for today's On My Shelf. If you're interested in hearing an author's perspective on books, movies, and TV shows, subscribe to my channel. And thanks for watching.